Thank you for inviting me to speak with you today. I prepared a short presentation on who I am, why I've applied for the position of Master of New College, and what I will do if I'm appointed as Master, and it's integrated. So when I'm telling you who I am, it's really an insight into where I've been, because I find, as history professors will say, the past is a predictor of the future. I was at a speaking engagement in Ottawa on the weekend, and a CA student with a national firm asked me, how did I get to be a professor at York University? And what I told her is what I'm going to tell you today. I have a degree in biochemistry from McMaster University. I have an MBA from U of T, where I got most of my accounting courses. I got a CA. I was a student at Clerks & Gordon, which is now Ernst & Young. And after that, I specialized in taxation. I was lucky enough, I worked for a fellow named Bill Crawford. He was a tax partner. And he did a lot of speaking and writing, and I got the chance to do some articles for the Canadian Tax Journal to update a chapter in a book. And then in 1985, after I'd had my first daughter, I got the chance to work in national tax. My husband and I job shared for a year, which was fairly innovative at the time, even for an accounting firm, especially in tax. At the end of that, I left the firm. By then it had become Ernst & Young, and worked in industry for a while in real estate, property management and development with a small CA firm, and then applied to a job at York University, Department of Administrative Studies at that time, as an assistant professor in income tax law. I was appointed in 1991. I made it through the tenure process and was promoted to associate professor and in 1997. And in the same year, I got my FCA, which is, I'm a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants. It's a designation awarded for distinguished service to the profession. At the time, there were only 35 women dead and alive. They were actually all alive. It tells you what it was like back then, who were women FCAs, about a couple of hundred altogether, of a membership in 20,000. So it was a real honor and privilege. Ingrid Spletstozer, who teaches assurance and information systems, is also an FCA. I went on sabbatical, studied and passed the CFP exam, that's Certified Financial Planner. And I've worked with both professional bodies over my career, with the Institute of Chartered Accountants, with the CICA, on committees, governing bodies, competency maps, etc. So I got my CFP in 1998, and then while I was on sabbatical, and then I was asked to be an associate dean. And so I came back early from my first sabbatical, and I was an associate dean for quite a long time, as you can see from the slide. Mostly associate dean academic, curriculum affairs, but also students from time to time. Sometimes I was the only associate dean, so I did everything. Ron Bordessa used to say that the associate dean eats from the dean's plate. That's what Harry Crow had said when he was an associate dean. So you got what you got. In between my two stints as associate dean, I was an acting dean for a year. And I'd been working on my LLM at Osgoode Hall Law School in tax law while I was in the dean's office, and I graduated in 2002, which people thought was quite amusing. To have been an acting dean and also a graduate. But I figured I was a good model to working students. When I finished in the dean's office, about that time the School of Public Policy and Administration was formed. I asked to be cross-appointed to that unit, and so I'm 60% admin studies, 40% PPA, and I was director of that school until the end of this calendar year, and I went on sabbatical. So this is what I'm currently working on as a researcher, and you can see it's tax, it's Canadian, it's, I think it's practical, interesting problems that have been informed by people I talk to in financial planning, students I work with in terms of post-secondary education, and groups I've worked with. For example, my work on disability savings plan. I've written an article before on caregiving for frail and elderly taxpayers, and people told me it was the first article ever written in the Canadian Tax Journal on that subject, and that was informed by work I had done with on the Ontario Fair Tax Commission. This is an indication of the positions I've held on governing bodies, administrative leadership positions, You can see I've been church treasurer. I've been on the governing body of the CA profession in Ontario. I was on the board of governors of the Canadian Tax Foundation and on the board of trustees of the York University Pension Plan. And I currently serve on the Financial Planning Standards Council of Canada's Certification Committee. That's the CFP designation. I enjoy that work because it gives me great insight into what's happening in the business world with professional bodies, and I try to keep one foot there, and as well as one foot in academia. The CFP body, the last one, is particularly interesting because they are certified by ISO standards, so they're following best practices in terms of certification, governance, and all that stuff. And it's very, very interesting. I'm the lone academic from across Canada that sits on that committee. And we look at everything from university courses to continuing professional development, etc., to discipline matters. This is something I'm particularly proud of. I was asked to submit to an interview for the Women's Leadership Council. This is on the CICA website, Canadian Institute of Chartered Accountants. I'm one of 10 women who's profiled there. I particularly like it because it's got a nice picture of my family. You can't really see them well there, but they've got 4 beautiful daughters and a very handsome husband. So that's something that I'm particularly proud of. I'm in very good company. One of my heroes, the Auditor General, Sheila Fraser, is one of the 10 women as well. In the process of that interview, I was asked a couple of questions that didn't make it to the profile that this journalist wrote, and that's one of them. How did I try to raise my profile in my place of employment? That's what I think. I've always been a hard worker. I've been a good listener, and I've always tried to act fairly and ethically. In terms of leadership qualities, this is another question I was asked. And so I gave them something that someone had written to me, something they had written to Lorna Marsden when she was president, when she was choosing an acting dean. And it talks about how I'm a good listener, how I'm pretty unflappable. I feel like a flapper. Maybe because it's the Faculty of Liberal and Professional Studies. But it was quite a compliment. I've done some work in the community. The work I'm most proud of is the income tax preparation clinics that I've worked on with York University accounting students for, as you can see, over a decade. It's going on about 15 years. First, I worked with the CRA, Canada Revenue Agency, and that was when the Institute, which has been running tax clinics throughout this province for about 50 years, they celebrated the 50th year a couple of years ago, but they weren't taking students. They would just take CAs. So I worked with the CRA. I had 2 sites. One was at 15 Tobermory, which is just down the street from the university. One was at a church at Finch and Bathurst. And I did that until and when I finished my term as acting dean. Went on sabbatical, and when I came back, the Atkinson Professional Accounting Association asked me if I would sponsor them. They needed a sponsor for an ICAO clinic. At that time, the ICAO had associate student memberships, and so I've been doing that since. And we have 3 clinics, 3 sites. We do about 20 to 30 clinics every March, and we figure we do about 300 tax returns, all manually. But they're not that difficult because a lot of these, our clients are people, new immigrants to the country, people receiving social assistance. We get a few students, but mostly people on social assistance. Students have told me they really benefit from this experience. So the reason I've applied is because working with students has been the most rewarding part of my career, and I hope you've seen that through my presentation. Students come first. In my books, if I have got a decision to make, students come first. And the opportunity to continue my work helping students make the most of their years at York is why I've applied. What I will do, if I'm appointed master of this college, is provide programs that will help students develop their intellectual skills, support their studies. When I talk to students, when I'm driving them back to campus after the tax clinics, I asked them, are they involved with new college programs? And not too many are, but the ones who are involved with peer mentoring, and they really think it benefits them and as well as other students. I think we have to as professors, help students prepare for rewarding careers and effective citizenship. As master, I'll organize talks and panel discussions where students and faculty can meet with contacts in the university, contacts outside the university, former alums. But to do this, I'm not going to just take on my own ideas. I will be consulting with faculty and students and other masters, other units at the university, so as not to duplicate. So I'll be talking to others to find out what programs to expand, which ones to add. I'm also a firm believer in communication, email lists. The college that I'm most familiar with at this university is McLaughlin, and we get emails of all the McLaughlin events and talks, public policy dinners, etc. So that's a model. But I will consult first to see what works and what doesn't. Finally, one of the things I believe strongly in, as you can tell, is the value of hands-on experience, internships, and co-op. And when I was an associate dean, that's what I worked on. I worked on co-ops. I've worked on proposals for a co-op degree. I was associate dean when the iTech degrees were developed. Had a very small part to play in the iTech co-ops. I was associate dean when the BHRM was developed. That's the first day degree that Atkinson College had, and I know they have internships. And I think we need more of that, more experiential education opportunities. But that's something I will push for no matter where I am in this university. And that's the end. Thank you very much.